Okay, so it's 10:32. I think we'll make a start. So good morning, everyone. Very warm welcome to you all joining us at our Thoughtful Thursday session today. My name is Aisling from Irish in Britain. I'll be hosting today's session. Just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. So this session is being recorded and it will be on our website after the session as a learning resource. Nobody can appear on camera apart from panellists and speakers, and everybody is on mute. So if you would like to contribute to this session or ask a question, which we'll hold space for towards the end of the speakers, then please do so using the chat function box at the bottom of your screen, and we will be monitoring that throughout. We encourage lots of engagement, so anything you'd like to contribute doesn't have to be a question, can be a comment. Please do put that in there and we will discuss that with the speakers when we hold the space for Q&A. And I think that's probably it for housekeeping. I'll now hand over to my colleague Zibi. Zibi is our Cuimhne coordinator and she'll just say a few words and then hand over to our speakers for the day. So over to you, Zibi.
Thank you, Aisling, and a warm welcome to everybody joining our Cuimhne Thoughtful Thursday this morning. We're delighted today to have a guest speaker, Anne Rossiter, and the topic for today is the colour of love, mixed marriage and dementia care. I will first of all introduce Anne. Anne was born in Limerick in Ireland, and she left school at 18 and she came after travelling to she came over to England. She's travelled to France and Spain, and she met her partner who is from the Indian state of Gujarat. Anne has a background in education. She became a teacher at the College of North West London, and amongst other subjects she taught Irish studies, and she's also known well in the community for her activism in the anti-imperialist and anti-racist movements, and has been involved with political work in the Irish women's movement in Britain. We're delighted to have Anne here today, and before we hand over to Anne to open our session, I'd also like to welcome one of our panellists, Dr Mary Tilki, who is the patron of our Cuimhne work, our work on memory at Irish in Britain. And Mary is going to say a few words before we hand over to Anne. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you, Zibiah. And it's a great privilege to be here today and to welcome Dr. Anne Rossiter, whom I've known for a number of years now. I think the topic today is one which is of growing importance because a number of Irish women over the years married people from non-Irish cultures. I mean, Irish people in Britain, that is, married people from non-Irish cultures. Very difficult to get any numbers of these because the census data isn't very good. It was often calculated by head of household. So the man, the ethnicity of the man was counted rather than that of the woman. Irish women married men from all different backgrounds, and again, my own experience, and I know it's Anne's experience as well. We know lots of women in our older age group who married men from different parts of the Asian continent, from the Caribbean, and where I live locally in North London, I also know a lot of women who married Italians, Spaniards, Greeks and Turks. And these marriages were not always approved of in Ireland. In fact, in particular, if somebody was a dark-skinned person, somebody from India or Pakistan or from the Caribbean, the family back in Ireland did not approve, and some went so far as to cut off the woman. And an occasional man who married out of the community. So bringing up children of mixed heritage was a difficult issue for those women. And unlike other women who were able to take their children back on holiday to Ireland, maybe for the summer holidays, many of these women were never able to go back to Ireland. And occasionally, if the man from the other culture was a Catholic, it was just that little bit more acceptable for people. But it's very difficult to generalize about that. So the women often led quite isolated lives because, very sadly, they certainly weren't accepted by the majority community, but they weren't always accepted by the Caribbean or the Asian community groups as well. So people could be isolated. The women could be isolated, and particularly when children were exposed to discrimination and racism, it was usually the woman who had to deal with that, who had to protect her children or to absorb the hostility that they were experiencing them. Now, why are we talking about this on a site where we usually talk about dementia? Well, these mixed marriages are now, for the most part, they're getting older, and old age is one of the major risk factors for dementia. And many people, like myself and Anne, whom you're going to hear about, married people from other cultures, and are now potentially in the situation of caring for somebody who either has dementia or is suspected of having dementia. And not everybody, very few people, in fact, understand these experiences. So I'm really looking forward, in one way, to hear what Anne is going to say about it. I know it's going to be a difficult time, but we have got so much to learn about this experience. So, we can ask some questions about it later. So I think over to you, Anne, at this point.
Thank you very much, Mary. Sorry, thank you very much, Mary, and also Zibiah and Aisling for setting all of this up and inviting me on at the grand old age of nearly 80. I never thought I'd be featuring on anything at this stage of life. Mary, you're talking about us getting old. So I called this, purely by chance, called this session The Colour of Love, because of the book that Yasmin Alibi-Brown and Anne Montague wrote. You'll probably see it backwards, the script, but that was published way back in 1992. It's not specifically about Irish Irish women and men on occasion, as you said, Mary. It's usually the woman who marries into the mixed race relationship. It's about a general, looking at the subject generally. But as you pointed out, Mary, very large numbers of us, going right back to the 70s and possibly the 60s. I came here in 61, but I didn't notice many mixed race marriages. However, by the 70s, yes, it wasn't unusual at all. And as far as figures are concerned, I don't have statistics for the reasons you pointed out, Mary, but I do read in the paper from time to time that mixed race children are the largest group of young people that are growing exponentially in Britain in general, and particularly here in the London area and other urban conurbations like Manchester. On the subject of dementia, that's the main issue. And I have to tell you that sadly, very recently, Gautamappa, my partner of 50 years from the Indian state of Gujarat, as you pointed out, was diagnosed with semantic dementia. We're both only learning about it. In fact, I'd never heard of it before, this semantic version, and it indicates a difficulty with words. Now, for Irish people, difficulty with words would be a major, major problem. For Gautam, who tends to be a quiet person, maybe it's not so bad. But while it wasn't unexpected, he had been having trouble for some time. It did come as a shock. These things always come as a terrible shock. And we're still in the throes of trying to take it on board. all the various ramifications from understanding the progress of the disease, or more properly, I think it's called a condition, to starting to think about how we can adjust our lives, our living arrangements, and to consider medical and physical care, and so on. And I've said we're both pushing 80, so age being such a problem where dementia is concerned, excuse me, that has to be taken into account. Now, one of the reasons I was so attracted to Cuimhne is the fact that you are, one of the aspects of the work is the collection of stories, and I'm a historian by trade, and I have collected women's stories about a whole range of subjects and published some. And I'm particularly interested in this particular aspect and have volunteered my services, such as they are, for the future. But one of the things regarding stories that I was looking at in the Cuimhne material, the publicity material, is that you're gathering personal stories and creating a memory book, which I think is hugely interesting and important for people. I notice that we're beginning to focus on our story, our stories. We're more or less, I think, doing something called stock taking of our lives. We frequently find ourselves recalling past events, past achievements, past disappointments, disasters even. We've had plenty of them. And I know it's not an uncommon activity of the old, but of course it's particularly an issue or something that is focused on big time in dementia sufferers. Gautam, my partner, is only too well aware that the disease tends to affect short-term memory first, and that longer-term memory lingers on, and that people linger in the past somewhat until they completely go out of it. And its memory altogether is eroded. So all in all, I suppose it's hardly surprising as old people, we would dwell on the past, but it becomes more acute now. And what is interesting for us is that we've had what I would consider to be very interesting lives, apart from this Indian-Irish element, but also we've led very political lives. And they have been full of interest, a lot of sorrow as well, but a lot of interest. And while we remember things to do with births, deaths, and marriages, family issues, and the fact that we have traveled a lot, we both suffer from wanderlust and have been right across the world many times. But we are particularly focusing in, I notice, on our political experiences, maybe because we're trying to recreate a lost world for us, I don't know. So the question is that I was thinking, what kind of memories, political ones that is, are we focusing in on? It's interesting looking back on it. Sorry, excuse me, I have throat problems. Have to have a glass of water. And many of our political memories are a crisscross, a multidimensional kind of phenomenon, which is concerning things Irish and things Indian, and of course things British. That's been the environment that we've lived in, kind of a multicultural, multinational environment. And one of the main focuses has been anti-racism, because of course we've both experienced racism, Gautam in particular because of his skin color and his ethnic origins. And me, I experienced it, as did so many Irish people, particularly during the long years of the Troubles and the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And I suppose the racialization of the Irish, something that is accepted by many like me, and is rejected by other Irish people for a variety of different reasons. Gautam's work on
trying to do with our Cuimhne project at Irish in Britain is to help to gather a bank of photographs that people may be happy to share, so that families who may not have access to photos from the past but would find them useful can perhaps use those to stimulate conversations about kind of earlier.
Yeah. And you find it works.
Photographs can sometimes be very useful in helping people to access memories from the past in a way that's well, many different things. There can be sense, our sense of smell is often a great quick route back to memories from the past as well. So whether that's spices or soaps or all sorts of things that help our brain to connect with earlier memories. But I suppose photographs, we recognise not everybody may have a lot of photographs or images from their earlier years, especially if you it depends on the background you come from, whether you grew up in a family that had access to a camera or not. So it's a printout camera.
I remember that things get circulated around a lot. You know, my mother would borrow the camera from her sister and things like that. It would go on to somebody else, you know. Yeah, but that was a village. So village life was slightly communal on occasion.
Thank you. Mary, did you want to come in?
I just think listening to Anne's communication with her friend Nora just reminds me is that people with dementia, like people with mental health, can often be suspicious. So, you know, they may not recognize you because you may say, I'm your friend Anne, but their recollection, even if they've got a photograph of her, an image of you, is the Anne that you were friends with 30 years ago, rather than the Anne that's existing now. But I think the other thing in answer to the question that was submitted is that if you find something that works, like the talk about Holy Communion for that particular person, don't be afraid to use that time and time again, because the person may not remember, probably won't remember it was something that we talked about the last time we met. Similarly, if you find a song or a poem that somebody likes and is inspired by, lightens up to, don't be afraid to use that time and time again, because I think if it works, it works. So we don't have to think of new things every time.
Yeah. Gautam is very interested in music from rural areas in India, in particular in his own state of Gujarat and next door in Rajasthan. He did quite a lot of political work there for the UN at one stage on a dam. He's a mathematical programmer by trade, and he did, on behalf of the UN, did this whole business of checking out how many Dalits, you know, and people, tribal people, were going to be absolutely submerged in water when the dam was flooded, and they were not counted in the official records at all, because of course they didn't have deeds, the formal deeds to the land and all that kind of stuff. But when he was working out there with them, he collected quite a lot of his music, his songs. And so now we're getting some of them. We have two friends who are singers of traditional folk music in India, and we're getting those, and they're coming via somebody coming from Ahmedabad any day soon. So yes, we're building up the banks of music as well.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you to Mary too. We're coming to the end of our time now. It's getting to 11:30. So we'd just like to use this last minute to say thank you again for sharing.
Thank you.
Interesting experiences and reflections, and to encourage people that have tuned in or who may be listening back to the recording to take a look at some of the resources that are out there. At Irish in Britain, we have a bank of resources that we're building to support reminiscence conversations. And we also welcome contributions to that bank of resources for people that may be interested to try those out in their own family settings. So thank you very, very much.
And thank you very much. Thank you. Lovely time.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Mary. Thanks all. Thanks for joining us.